So, the Greens Senator, Mr. Max Chandler, gave a very interesting speech in the Senate that I would like you to please have a listen.
What sort of government is it that can't guarantee a cent, a single cent, for public and affordable housing, but can guarantee $254 billion for everyone in this place to get $9,000 extra a year on tax? They can guarantee.
Okay, so what he's talking about is the new budget in Australia, where the government is going to reduce the tax of people who earn $200,000 or more by $9,000. So every year they're going to be taxed $9,000 less, and but that doesn't happen to people who earn less than $200,000 a year. So he's complaining that there is money to give tax breaks to the rich. But also I would like to add that there is enough money to buy nuclear submarines, and also there is enough money to give grants, tax breaks to fossil fuel companies. But when it comes to supporting the people who are struggling financially, who might be sick and unable to work, or otherwise struggling with finding housing and income and the rest of it, the government always doesn't have enough money. And so he is giving a very interesting emotional talk that we can continue listening to.
Guarantee $41 billion for fossil fuel subsidies. They can guarantee $16 billion in tax concessions for property investors, but they can't.
This $16 billion in property investors, I think he's talking about negative gearing, which means that you can have a investment property, second, third, 10th, 100th property, and if you are losing money because the rent that you're collecting from those properties is smaller than the mortgage that you have to pay to the bank, that's a loss on your side. That loss can be deducted from your taxable income, from your other sources of income.
Can't guarantee a cent for public and affordable housing in the middle of the worst housing crisis we have seen in generations. A Labor member over there just before told me to grow up. Grow up! And if you think that your strategy is to tell everyone in this country it's immature to think that in one of the wealthiest countries in the world we can't put a roof over everyone's head, if you think it's a strategy to call people immature because we think it's wrong that you're raising more money from charging interest on student debt than you are from raising taxes on gas corporations, if you think it's a good strategy to tell everyone in this country that it's immature to expect that while politicians in this place are about to get a $9,000 extra a year off on their tax, we think no one in this country should be forced to live on poverty.
He has a point. Australia is supposedly one of the richest countries in the world, so we shouldn't have housing problem. We shouldn't have millions of people at or below poverty line. And according to Max, now the interest that government collects on a student loan generates more revenue for the government than the tax they collect from the, did he say fossil fuel companies, which is absolutely shocking.
Poverty payments. How dare you? How dare you? And the strategy that you resort to is lying to the Australian public. Now, if you're watching at home, here's the strategy that they're deploying. Here's the strategy they're deploying. They are trying to crush your hope. They are trying to crush your hope. What they are trying to do to you right now is to say this is all you can hope for. And if you hope for anything else, and if anyone comes out and says, you know what, when you can find $4.2 billion for a surplus, maybe we should be spending $5 billion a year on public and affordable housing, you'll get attacked for it. They are trying to bash you down until there is nothing left for you to hope for. But you know what? You know what? The reality is that the reason they're doing it is not for technical or policy reasons. There's not actually any reason we couldn't tax big corporations and make sure we build enough public and affordable housing in this country. The private construction industry is in decline. We could be using those skills and construction materials to build public and affordable housing. We could be freezing rent increases, the same that countries around the world have done and Australia has done before. We could do that. But the reason they don't want to do it is because really they're on the side of the banks and property developers who make enormous profits in this country. Here's the deal. In this budget, they're guaranteeing money for property developers and tax concessions to build apartments that, when Mirvac built them, Mirvac, by the way, the outgoing CEO of Mirvac, if you're wondering, is also the person they're appointing ahead of their National Supply and Affordability Council. What a sick joke. Anyway, they charged for those apartments 20% above market rent. Above market rent. Above market rent. Well, guess what?
Isn't it amazing that we have a situation here in Australia where the government is in the hand of the Labour Party, and Labour should really advance the interest of Labour. However, like Max is explaining, they are really influenced heavily by the big corporations and property developers and multinationals and interest groups. And it's really sad. I cannot fathom the reason that two political parties in Australia, the main ones, the Coalition and the Labour, are not really advancing the interest of the Labour and the working class. However, they are almost, by the look of it, guaranteed to get the government, either of them, either the Coalition or the Labour. All of these crossbench parties or independents, by the look of it, have no chance, which is unbelievable. Because these are the only guys who are fighting for the defenseless and for the poor and people who have no power or influence or media and the rest of it. Yet we don't vote for them, and that's the $1 million or $1 billion question. Let's continue.
No one in this country is going to take that for much longer. And if you think your strategy is to yell and abuse...
Okay, so Max is here that we will not take that for much longer. I think he means that people will not vote for Labour, will not accept their ideas, their arguments anymore. I think he means that people will stop voting Labour and Coalition. But I hope he was right. I'm not so sure. Because, we are in a Western democracy, a so-called duopoly, so we have to wait and see.
And attack anyone who asks for more. If your strategy is that, and listen to that, you've got another thing coming, because there's enough people in this country now who are screwed over by a political system that snarls and attacks anyone who asks for more, while we've just seen the banks record 10...
Again, yes, that's true. Millions of people are being screwed over by both political parties who just have been alternating in the government. But the question is, these political parties who have been screwing over people for generations keep getting voted in, and that's something I'm really struggling to understand. Right? It's so-called Western democracy. Can someone please explain to me how come a government that is on the side of the big corporations keeps winning elections, like the last coalition government, who was in power for almost 10 years?
So billions of dollars in profit. If anyone thinks that's normal, and if you're going to go around and call the Greens radicals for suggesting that in a wealthy country...
It's so joke that people think anyone saying Greens are radicals can't be serious. Because what you're advocating is really basic stuff. There's nothing radical about wanting to help people, having affordable housing, taxing corporations a fair bit. Not a fair bit. I mean, taxing them fairly. But here we are. So let's continue.
Like this, the fact that the banks are making billions of dollars in profit while the government can't guarantee a cent for public and affordable housing is moderate. You've got an absolute another thing coming. The only radicals in this place are the ones who think doing that is sustainable. The only radicals in this place are the ones who think that it's okay to give yourselves 9,000...
That's true. The government who want in such a big economic hardship that people are going through, they think it's such a great idea to give money to the rich, not to the poor, but to the rich. That's very radical to me.
$1,000 extra a year off on your tax, while telling people they have to live on $52 a day. What a sick joke. And It's remarkable that, and good to hear that people are bringing up door knocking, because maybe I'll finish with this. We had someone come into our office, a woman who had just had her rent jacked up by $120 a week, $120 a week, and this person is on Centrelink payments, unemployed long-term because of a debilitating heart condition, but unable to get on DSP. After rent, bills and food, he literally did not have the money to pay the $70 train trip to get home to be with her. When my team told him we'd transfer him $100 immediately so he could book the ticket straight away and buy some food for the trip, he broke down weeping. He spent 2 full days desperately pleading with Centrelink to give him an urgent payment. And you stand here and you think that it's good enough to give yourselves tax cuts while this is happening to people in this country. How dare you?
Absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable what's happening here. So obviously they're getting $9,000 to themselves and all the other rich people in this country. But also we have billions of dollars giving to grants to fossil fuel companies, to mining companies. And we just had close to $400 billion for 8 single nuclear submarines. And obviously a third of largest corporations in Australia pay 0 tax. And people are really suffering, like this person who, due to heart conditions, cannot work, and a routine rent rise is enough to turn his livelihood upside down. So this is the situation in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and catch you later.